I'm just, honestly, my heart just lights up when I see you. It's so lovely to see you. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. And it's great to see you again.
That's very sweet of you to say that to me. How may I serve you today?
Yeah, that question, Neale, is like, I can feel it just resonating through my heart and my whole body. Like, wow, I don't know if anybody's ever said that to me before. Well, I feel like we are here in service for the higher consciousness of humanity. And that by bringing our lights together, that we can illuminate some more space, some more awareness, and have a conversation that will help light the light within others. And for those that already are connected to their light and are glowing and shining, for us to be able to amplify that in some wonderful way and really, just light this place up some more. More love.
I love those thoughts, and I couldn't agree more with every word you just spoke. I do have a little problem, however, today on my computer. You are crashing the beautyometer on my computer.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
I have a meter on my computer that
You.
only allows a certain level of beauty to be displayed at any one time. And when you come on the screen, the beautyometer breaks.
That's so cute. Thank
So
you.
I've got to figure out some way to deal
Oh,
with that.
computer. Just like give it a little stroke and be like, there. It's only AI. It can't cope.
Yes.
It's not as advanced as us. It's trying to find
Well,
its own beauty in the world.
yes.
It's borrowing everybody else's, but that's okay. So I want to talk to you, Neale, and thank you again. It really is quite special to be with you. You are, one of my not lifelong, because I didn't know you when I was a child, but for a very long time, since I would say my 20s, you've been a hero of mine. I think we discussed this last time, since I first saw you on a movie about indigo children and another one where you were talking about, you were illustrating the artwork of a young girl and an indigo child that did incredible paintings, and it was just gorgeous. And then, of course, the conversations with God books, and you actually have 40 books in, I think, is it just 40 or more than 40? I feel like you've written so many. You're an author of so many incredible books, Neale. And the last one that we talked about was The God Solution, where you were inviting everybody to consider the new religion, that everything is pure love. And now you've just released a new one called God Talk: Experiences of Humanity's Connections with a Higher Power. And what's really wonderful about this as well, because it's it's a delightful book. It's gorgeous. You just get the energy coming through it when you read it. But it's also one of your series called Common Sentience books, where there's a whole load of different topics and subjects. And, anyway, you've done so much, and you've been a hero of mine for a very long time. So it really is an honor to speak with you. It really is an honor to see you.
Well, those are very kind words to say to me, and I always hope I can live up to anyone's thoughts about the wonderful messages that have come through. It has very little to do with me, as you know, Tara. It's about what I was given to share. It's as simple as that. If somebody walked up to me and gave me $1 billion, and then I wound up sharing that with other people, and they were thanking me for all that I've given them, I would have to say, well, I'm not really giving you anything. I'm simply passing on to you what was given to me. But it's kind of you to say those sweet words to me, and I appreciate. I just hope I can live up to them.
Oh, bless you. I feel like living up to it isn't like, I really love what you say, actually, that maybe there is no such thing as giving. It's just sharing. It's just passing on what we've all been given. And we all have been so given, so gifted just to exist is a gift. I was talking about this yesterday on one of my videos, right? That's the
Yes,
gift. And to receive our own gift, I think, is really important. To receive this gift of me, for you to receive the gift of you, and to have that appreciation, that joy, that connection, to receive ourselves. And then, of course, yeah, sharing it, passing it on. Everything is given to us, isn't it?
I believe that that is true, that all that we ever could need or want or desire in order to live the life that we've been designed to live, that our soul intended us to experience. All that we've needed to do that has been given to us, and it resides within each of us, and all we have to do really is call it forward, call it forth. So you know what? Many people have said that they believe that life is a school, but I don't see life as a school. I don't experience life as a place where we have to learn something, but simply to remember and then call forth what we've already been given, what we were given from the beginning, from the start of all of it. So I agree with the words that you're speaking, and I hope that the kind of activities in which we engage in our life can assist others whose lives we touch to remember likewise who they really are and why they came here to the realm of the physical.
Yes, collective awakening. And that's one of the things you talk about in your book is waking up out of the sleepwalker state. But I want to get to that in a little while. I've got quite a few things that I'm really keen to ask you about that you talk about in your book, and then taking that a little bit further. And then, if we do have time, and I'm not going to tax too much of your energy, I do have some questions from some people in my community that when I said I was going to be interviewing you, did they have questions? And there was some that came through that if we do have time, I'd love to ask you those.
Perfect. I'm all yours.
Yay. Thank you. In your beautiful book, God Talk, you're talking about, like right in the beginning, that we are made in the image and likeness of God. And then you go on to talk about how in the Bible, there's an instruction, and you actually said God orders to kill millions. And that's how that's been interpreted, how that message has been put out into the world. And you state in the book, but it's not true that God actually gave those instructions. I believe the authors of those passages were simply and sadly deluded. And this I find quite fascinating. This is like the tip of the iceberg, I think, about why such an interpretation would be made, why that would be propagated, and then why, those people that, did propagate that information, and then why so many of us would become so fallible to believe it and justify the killing for religious reasons, because God apparently gave those instructions. Why would human beings do that, Neale? What do you think about that?
I think that we are motivated by number one, fear. That is, we're afraid of each other, and we're afraid of ourselves because we don't really know who we really are. When human beings really imagine that we are this, that we are our bodies, and maybe some more expansive human beings think that we are our body and our mind. But when we think that this is who we are, we begin behaving in a very strange way. We think that life is about survival, so that we pay all of our attention and place all of our focus on the process of survival. What would it take for me to survive this moment, this challenge that I'm facing, this experience that I'm caught up in? You know, we can't even have a, a discussion in our own homes with our own family members without worrying about how we can survive the conversation without being made wrong.
And that's our
So,
loved ones. We have that with
yes,
loved ones.
yes.
Mm.
So, and I think that the reason, to answer your question directly, I think the reason is, Tara, that we don't know, or if we do know, we don't believe, or if we do believe, we don't feel committed to who we really are. That we are not this. This is not who I am. This is not who I am, that I'm not my body or my mind, that I am, in fact, a spiritual entity, a spiritual being, what I call a soul, and that my soul is a spiritual entity having a body and a mind, but these are just pieces of equipment. So that's why we have been willing to believe, because the Bible tells us, I mean, if you read the Bible with a calculator in your hand, the Bible is very clear. It says in the Bible that God commanded the killing of over 1 million people. I'm not making that up. You can read it right in the Bible. So we believe it because that's how we feel. We think that God feels about certain people the way we feel about certain people. We think that God says, no, if you are not believing in the right religion or the right code of behavior, or you don't belong to the right culture, whatever it is, that you deserve to die. Or certainly at the very least, to be totally, completely, and absolutely ignored, if not abused. And so, yes, we have come to believe that. And you would think after all this time on the planet, we've been here now for a couple of weeks, I think most human beings would agree that our species is at least 2 or 3 weeks old. And after all the many weeks we've been here on the planet, you would think we've outgrown our infantile and primitive understandings. But we haven't.
We haven't.
We're very close to nuclear war, even as we're speaking right now. One wrong move in certain areas of the country on this very day could produce nuclear holocaust. So what would it take for us to wake up?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to have a new conversation with God. Maybe each of us who believe in God need to ask, okay, God, what's the truth about all of this?
Yeah.
And maybe we're now finally ready to hear the larger truth that we couldn't really embrace when we were primitives in ancient times.
Do you think maybe people are terrified of I am the image and likeness of God, and that comes with such great power, such great responsibility, to have that much awareness of truth, of self, of source, of all of it, that consciousness, that people are perhaps afraid of that much power and responsibility?
I think so. I think that goes right back to what I said at the outset. It's fear of all those things, fear of each other, yes, and fear of ourselves, no question. And sadly, fear of God. Who wouldn't be afraid of a God? Who would not be afraid of a deity who we are told will judge us, condemn us, and punish us
And
to
kill me
everlasting,
if
and
you're on the
kill
wrong
millions,
side.
and punish us with everlasting damnation if we don't believe what we are told about God. So, when I was 9 years old, I often tell the story. I was born and raised in the Catholic faith. Now, I'm not a Catholic basher. I'm really glad, frankly, that I was born, as a member of one of the world's great religions, because at least it convinced me of the existence of a higher power, of God. But on the details, what they say, the devil's in the fine print. So in the fine print, in the small letters, about God, I was told in the 3rd grade of my elementary school. I'm 9 years old. And the priest came into our classroom to talk to us about the doctrines and the dogmas of the Catholic Church. And he's explaining in that particular lesson the difference between mortal sin and venial sin, which are 2 categories of sin that the Catholic Church teaches about. Mortal sin is the worst kind of offense you could ever commit. And if you die with a mortal sin on your soul, you go straight to hell. That's what the church teaches. If you die with a venial sin on your soul, you go to purgatory. where you kind of like burn off the offense, but then you can go to heaven. But there's no going to heaven if you have a mortal sin in your soul. Now, of course, I'm 9 years old. I want to know more. So I raised my hand in the classroom and I asked the priest, well, Father, can you give us an example of a mortal sin? I'm expecting him to say, well, murder, or if you steal someone's life savings, or perhaps child abuse, whatever it might be, some horrible, horrible sin. He says, certainly. It's a mortal sin if you miss Mass on Sunday. I said, I'm sorry? What? He said, well, if you have a good excuse, then it's okay. If you like if you're caring for a sick parent, or if you're an adult and you have to work on Sunday to take care of your family, fair enough. But if it's like, you just decide not to go to church that Sunday, maybe a friend that you haven't seen in 25 years happens to visit you and you decide to celebrate, with that person, maybe go off, play a game of golf or whatever. So you miss church one week. If you don't go to confession before you die and have that sin absolved by a priest, you will be sent to hell for everlasting damnation. Now, my 9-year-old mind is trying to figure out, let me see if I got this straight. We're talking about a deity who would send me to everlasting damnation for missing church 1 week of my life?
Who's supposed to love you.
Yes. And talk about trying to fill the pews with fear. So who wouldn't be afraid of a God like that? So it's understandable how we would come to a place of being afraid of that kind of a God who will send you to hell for not going to church every week of your life.
So pretty much we're indoctrinated from childhood. But why would people, or whoever did it, put that message out there?
Well, because in those days they believed it. You see, they were taught those messages, and by those who also believed it, who also believed it. In other words, as the Bible itself says, the sins of the father shall be visited upon the sons, yea, even unto the seventh generation. So why they did it, why they put that message out there, is because that's the message they were given. And why those people gave them that message, because that's the message they were given. So we've been listening to the primitive teachings of very, very non-evolved beings, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. But because we were, I'm sorry?
No, I completely interrupted you. Forgive me. Carry on.
No, I'm sorry. You're going to have to go to hell. You're going to go straight to hell, everlasting damnation for interrupting me.
Bad me.
But
I forgot what you were saying now, and I forgot what I was.
It's totally understandable because you asked, why would people say those things? It's very understandable. We just pass on what we've been given to pass on.
So you think it was just ignorance? You don't think somebody went, I'm going to deliberately misconstrue and manipulate this message that was maybe once originally pure, and misinterpret it and propagate it out to deliberately create fear and control? Or do you think it was just an accident? They just got it wrong.
Well, I don't think those are the two choices, accident or deliberately. I think it was simply not accidental. It was intentional, but it was not a deliberate attempt to put fear into people's lives. That fear was already there. But, have our religions, and by the way, there are 4,000 religions on the planet right now. I didn't make that number up, folks. You can Google that. How many religions are there on the face of the earth? Not since the beginning of time, but being practiced right now today. 4,223 religions being practiced on the earth today. So the largest number of people on the earth believe in some sort of higher power. So, but I don't think that they're doing those religions are teaching us what they're teaching, deliberately to mislead us. But do they have the intention of controlling us? But honestly, religions don't seek to control us just because they want to hang on to power. I have to say that I believe most religions have good intentions. They really believe that this is what God wants. And so they're not deliberately trying to, malpractice beliefs. I think they're teaching what they sincerely believe God wants. The question is it possible, just possible, that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about each other?
Definitely.
The understanding of which would change everything.
Mm.
So that becomes the question. Are we willing to ask, might we be wrong about some of this? And that's why I think that if we have our own conversation with God, it'll become very clear to us that God would never, never behave in the way we think that God is behaving with us.
Mm.
That would change a lot, Tara. That would not only change our understanding of God, but it could change many of our behaviors with each other. Because you see, religions teach us to behave in the way God behaves.
Mm.
Religions tell us we should act divinely and and take the behaviors of God and place them in our own life. Of course, if we think that God is judgmental, condemning, and punishing, then we will be judgmental, condemning, and punishing each other.
Mm.
But if we think that God is really pure love, that God would never judge, condemn, or punish anyone for anything, because God can't be hurt, damaged, injured, upset,
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, or angered in any way, for a
Mm.
very simple reason, because God needs nothing from us. It's any more than we need something from a 16-month-old child. If your 2-year-old child spills the milk at the table, we don't say to the child, "It's okay, honey, I forgive you."
No.
Of course, forgiveness is not part of the equation, and we understand that. In fact, not only do we not forgive the child, we actually comfort the child in the moment of her despair,
Mm.
which is precisely what God does when we imagine that we've done something to somehow cause God to be angry, frustrated, or upset.
Mm.
God comforts us in the moment of our despair,
Mm.
and God doesn't need to forgive us for anything,
Mm.
because God understands how a species that is so unevolved, still developing
Mm.
in our understanding, God understands how a species at that level could behave the way we're behaving. And understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master.
Mm.
By the way,
Mm.
write that down on your bathroom mirror. Get a black magic marker, black felt tip pen, and write that on your mirror so you read it every morning when you wake up. Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. You needn't forgive anyone for anything. If you think you need to forgive somebody for something, then you've engaged in spiritual arrogance. Who are you to forgive anyone?
I totally agree. I totally agree. It does come down to compassion. It's interesting. There's so many things racing, through my mind when you're talking about how, maybe because if we are afraid that if we are the image and likeness of God and there's that much power and that much consciousness, and so then we've assumed the lesser man as well, and assumed that the other label that was also in the has been propagated in these spiritual books, that we are children of a lesser God, and that's quoted from your book. It's like, well, if we can't handle being the image and likeness of God, then we're going to bring God closer to our realm of understanding, our human traits, which
Yes, we've made God in the image
is,
and likeness of us.
yeah, exactly, judgmental and mean. But also what's interesting is because some people, yes, perceive God as judgmental and, therefore we fear that judgment. But some other people also, especially in the spiritual communities, have this idea that God is pure, and so pure that then we have to be more godly and like God, and thus be more pure and more pure and more pure, and then so pure that you're almost not human anymore, or kind of rejecting the human self, where I don't know, maybe you go vegan and you only chant all day and you wear white all day and whatever it is. I'm just giving, some little examples, but it's this idea of I have to be so pure, so good, so serving to others, so ungiving to myself, so selfless that I'm almost not even in my body, not of this world, to attain that connection with the divine, with God. Yeah, you've got a concerned look on your face there, Neale.
We are invited to be in this world, but not of it. It's not a question of that we have to be pure and we have to be divine and we have to be godly. But are we invited to be? The answer to that question is yes.
Mm.
So it's not something that we have to be. It's like, any more than we have to love our spouse or our partner. When I look at my incredible, wonderful wife, so glorious human being, do I have to love her? Or am I invited to love her simply because I see the glory and the wonder of who she is? But if I only love her because I think I have to, or worse yet, because I think that if I do, then I can get something in return. That if I think that love is a transaction,
That isn't love though, is it?
love, no, you don't understand. Love is transactional. I'll give you what you need, you give me what I need, and we can be happy. Because love is transactional. And because we experience human love as transactional, we think that God's love is transactional.
Mhm.
That God gives us her love if he gets what he needs, and he tells us what he needs. He's actually given us a list of 10 things he needs. We call them God's 10 commandments. But one of the first things I was told in my conversations with God, Neale, sweetheart, you're making it all up.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as the 10 commandments. Who
Mm.
would I command? There's nobody but me. I am that which is in everything. So who would I command? Would I command myself? And if I don't keep my own commandments, would the right hand slap the left? Who would I punish? So it's become very clear to me that we have simply a massive misunderstanding
Mm.
of who we are, who and what God is, and what pure love is really all about.
Mm.
Pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. We can't even love the person on the pillow next to us that way. But when the day comes when you can look at the person on the pillow next to you and say, I need and demand, require, and even hope for nothing in return. I'm not here with you because I want something in return. I'm here with you because there's no better place in the world to be, simply because of the wonder of who you are, not of what I get from you. Now that's love. And it took me many, many relationships to learn that and to experience it.
Mm.
Finally, before I died, I experienced it.
I love that we talked
So
about that in our last interview. We were talking about your marriages. I thought that was just wonderful. You didn't give up. You didn't give up on love. You kept going.
yes, I refused to give up. I thought, no, there's clearly something I don't understand here, the understanding of which would change everything. What is it I don't understand?
Mm.
And when I asked God that question, by the way, which I did, I said to God, okay, come on, help me out. What don't I understand? And
Mm.
God said, sweetheart, it's so simple. You think your life is about you, and your life has nothing to do with you. Your life is about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. But when you experience life in that way, then you discover a larger truth, the universal truth that, in fact, at the universal level, life is about you for a glorious reason.
Because you are everyone and you are God. How could it not be?
There's nobody else in the room.
Right? Why would you not love you as you love God, as you love others? Why would you leave yourself out? That would be weird.
And so I was given a 4-word truth. We are all one. And when I see the person across the room as simply me in another costume, if you please, then I understand how to make life really work. It took me, gosh, marriage after marriage after marriage
Mm.
to finally come to an awareness of how I could put that into my everyday reality.
I think people would love that to be a reality. Listening to you, it's like everything starts to melt. It's like, yes, it's just such a beautiful truth. We know that. And then the yeah buts come out. Yeah, but we can't do that because you can't trust this person, you can't trust that person, we don't know what's real anymore. You can't just walk around just loving everybody as you love yourself, because then you get hurt, you get taken advantage of, you get wounded. There's all the yeah buts. And also a lot of people, really, and it seems very obvious, it seems like it's really clear as day that there is also some kind of dark agenda, some force that is, I don't know, a war on love or a war on peace or something going on, where people, there seems to be an agenda where the fear is being used and propagated to advantage certain other people, a small group of people, for power, for money, for whatever it is. And this idea, this sense of reality seems to be getting bigger and bigger, that more and more people are going, there is this dark force. How do we stop it? We just want to live in love and peace. But there's so much fear being generated. And that is a dark energy moving through people's, like taking advantage of people's vulnerability and people's susceptibility to fear, that's being used. And what do you think about that, Neale? What would you say to people who are really struggling with this right now?
Well, I think you're right that the notion is becoming more and more widespread, just as you've described. But I think that it all goes away, at least in the individual lives, when we come to clarity, when we become conscious of the fact that who we are cannot be hurt or damaged, injured, or harmed in any way. So long as I think that I can be hurt, damaged, injured, or harmed, I'm going to be in a protective mode. And I'll be, as I said earlier, in a survival instinct. I'll do whatever it takes for me to survive, including hurting other people if I think I have to in order to survive. But when I'm clear that who I really am cannot be hurt, damaged, injured, or harmed in any way, then I am no longer susceptible. And the yeah buts go away. Yeah, but I could be betrayed. Yeah, but I could be hurt. Yeah, I should love everyone. Yeah, but I could be injured. But I've come to the place in my life, Tara. I'm now 80 years old, so I'm not a young man, and I'm sorry it took me so long, but I really have come to the place in my life, and I've been there for a while, since my first conversation with God. For the past 30 years, I've come to an awareness. I can't be hurt. I can't be damaged. I can't be harmed. I can have things happen to me that other people would think would harm them. But I got to share something with you. Once you've lost it all and gotten down to nothing, I mean, zero, down to nothing. And I was down to zero, sleeping on the sidewalk for a year of my life, sleeping on the concrete, going from person to person on the sidewalk, asking for a few pennies or a few coins so that I could maybe eat that day. I had no home, no place to live, nobody who cared anything about me. I was totally, completely alone, living on the outside, homeless. Once you've had that experience, you know what? I got to tell you something. Anything above that is luxury. And you don't get, when you survive that, and I lived that experience and survived it, believe it or not, in a happy place. Wound up at the end of that experience in a place where I realized how little I really need to be inwardly peaceful, joyful, and happy. Oh, it wasn't about my car. It wasn't about the size of my house. It wasn't about how much I have in my bank account. It wasn't even about how much food I have today. It wasn't, oh, I get it. It's not about any of that. So once if you really want to understand how to live fearlessly, go out and live on the sidewalk without a penny in your pocket for a year and come back and tell me all about what you think is really important in life.
Mm.
That experience changed my life. It was like going to a university, the University of Higher Awareness.
Mm.
I didn't intend it. I didn't want to do it. It wasn't something I did deliberately. But yeah, I wound up living on the sidewalk because of circumstances in my life. And it was one of the best things that ever happened in my life. So now I'm in an entirely different place. And I'm very clear that I'm not living to survive. And I'm not worried about whether someone's going to injure, harm, or hurt me, or worried that I'll be if I can't make the car payment, I may lose my car. That's true. I may lose my car. That's true. Oh, if they do this, if they do that, I could have my feelings hurt. That's true. I could have my feelings hurt. You know what? I'm past all of that.
Mm.
You can't hurt me anymore,
I woke up out of the
is
sleep.
what I've said to life.
Mm.
And when I'm in that place, then I can give abundantly of all I have to offer, whatever it might be. Not just my money, my talents, my gifts, my patience, my understanding, my awareness, my clarity, my companionship, and all that I have to offer, all the gifts that God has given to me and to all of us to share with all those whose lives we touch. It's transformational. And there are people who have lived that way far more fully than I will ever do. You know, Siddhartha Gautama lived that way from the beginning of his life, practically, when he understood, as a very young man, what I'm explaining to you now. Of course, he was not called Siddhartha Gautama throughout his life. He became known as simply the Buddha. But if we followed the Buddha's teachings, everything changes overnight.
Mm. Neale, do you think God was testing you? Because
No,
sometimes people really, there's that thing, isn't there? People think, oh, I'm being tested by God right now, and if I get through this, then there'll be gold on the other side, like
no, I don't think that God is testing us. Because God has no motivation to test us.
going
But
back
I,
to what
th-
we were talking about before.
but
Why would God
yeah,
test himself?
yeah, exactly. But I think that life is providing us with an opportunity to announce and declare, to express and fulfill, to demonstrate and experience who we really are. I do think there's a design to life. I think there's more going on here than meets the eye.
I
I
agree.
think Shakespeare had it right. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. To be or not to be, that is the question.
Mhm.
Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to rise up against a sea of troubles, and by opposing to end them, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come. So there's more going on here than meets the eye. God is not testing us, but life is providing us with an opportunity to know who we really are through the experience of it and the demonstration of it.
Mhm.
And so, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. and that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. It's really quite simple.
So what we were saying, you were talking in the beginning part of this interview about even today, potentially being on the brink of a nuclear war, and that fear in people, fear of death. So if we could have that understanding, gain the understanding that you gained whilst living on the street, that you cannot be hurt or harmed. And if we could take that in right now, everybody listening to this video and everybody, if we could ripple that and expand that awareness, that if we understood that now, that we can't be harmed, do you think that that level of consciousness would just evaporate any such agendas for war or attempts against us realizing who we are?
There'd be no rationale for war. The rationale would go away because we realize that we can't hurt or damage, harm or injure the people upon whom we would declare war, not their souls. And once we understand that we are talking about souls, spiritual entities who simply have a body and a mind, and even if their body is, evaporated or killed, even if you end the life of the body, they'll just reincarnate. They'll just come back in a different body.
Mm.
You know, or as they said in that wonderful movie, the force is with you. So who you really are cannot be hurt or damaged in any way. But can your body be hurt or damaged? Of course.
Yeah, we're delicate.
Can
But
my mind be hurt or damaged? Of course.
Mm,
But can my soul be hurt or damaged? No.
mm,
And when I understand that, the irony of it is that when I understand that who I really am, a spiritual entity, cannot be hurt or damaged in any way, then my body and my mind suddenly become immune to almost all of the incoming negative energies of life as well. That's what, to use that example I brought up a minute ago, that's what the Buddha taught. The Buddha told us that suffering is not necessary. Suffering is merely an announcement that you think that what's going on shouldn't be happening. But once you're clear that it's happening to provide you an opportunity to demonstrate who you really are, not only are you not suffering, you're actually grateful for the events of life, just as they're occurring, because you realize that they're giving birth to a new you. Like a woman in childbirth. I had the unspeakably blessed experience of being there at the birth of my children, especially my triplets. I was there when my partner gave birth to triplets, one child after the other, over a period of a few hours. And I watched her in pain. It was painful. But she didn't have the notion that what was going on shouldn't be happening. She realized, I'm bringing forth new life into the world. And even in her pain, she squeezed my hand and smiled and said, another child.
best pain ever. Was it a natural birth? Did she naturally birth 3 children?
Yes,
Wow,
yes.
that's amazing.
And I was able to feel and hold her hand as she went through that experience, as we went through it together, watching this process of birth and realizing, oh, I see. I have never understood anything about life. If you want to understand life truly, watch your partner give birth to triplets right in front of your face.
Mm.
It'll change your notion about life, I'll tell you that.
It certainly changed mine. I've given birth twice naturally, and both of my experiences were not painful, actually. And because I surrendered to it, I decided I didn't want to be in pain. Why would I want to be in pain when I'm having the best experience of my life, where I'm giving birth to a child? And I didn't want my child to be born in a state of pain and to know pain as their first experience as coming into this world. So I just said, I'm not going to be in pain. And I surrendered to the energies, and I actually let God do it. I actually was just like, I'll get out of the way. God is delivering this baby, and not just a body, a physical body, but a spiritual body through my body. And his soul needs to be delivered as well as his human form. And I just let go and let God, and had a completely blissed out experience of giving birth, blissed out of my mind, because I wasn't fighting and I wasn't afraid. And if we could have that attitude, it would be pretty cool. But also, perhaps, like you said with your story of living on the street, it took you to come to that, you had to experience that, or you did experience that, but then you became grateful because that taught you who you truly are. It enabled that awakening process. So perhaps this level of pain and suffering that's on the planet right now, and the amount of darkness and the amount of fear, is the human collective wake-up moment.
I would like to think so. That would be my hope and my dream. And if enough people choose to embrace that notion and choose to raise their consciousness to that level of awareness, it could, in fact, produce that outcome. All we have to do is reach critical mass.
Yeah.
And programs just like this help us to reach critical mass. If we were ever in a position to be able to reach that level of critical mass around these ideas, we're there in these days and times. Imagine just even a few years ago, we couldn't have been having the experience we're having right now, talking across the world from different parts on the planet between you and me, and being listened to and heard by thousands of people. Such an event couldn't even have occurred 10 or 15 years ago. When I was your age, we couldn't even have dreamt of such a thing. So this is the time, as Conversations with God, Book 4 says, the time now is ideal. This is a perfect time for our advancement as a species. The question simply is, will people take advantage of this moment?
I want to come back and talk about your book again, because I'm going to quote you from your book, actually. I picked out one of my favorite lines. But the largest percentage of humans do not yet understand that we will require a totally revised definition of God and a vastly expanded awareness of the purpose of life if we wish to guarantee joy-filled survival and not misery-laden survival for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. It's like, yes. Somebody did actually ask me to ask you, let me just scroll up and find his name, Nicholas Barrett. How do you know if you're just talking to yourself or you're talking to God? And you actually did answer that question in the Conversations with God book, but also in God Talk, in your new book, you actually give like a 6-step process for talking to God, don't you? Would you like to say anything about that, or to?
Well, I'd be happy to. Thank you for asking it. What's interesting, this is getting more interesting every minute, because Tara, your name, is my daughter's name, and the questioner, Nicholas, is my son's name.
Mhm.
So what is this with Nicholas and Tara
Mhm.
coming to me through other people?
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, the 6-step process that helps us all to move closer to having our own conversation with God. Step number 1, possibility. We have to accept and embrace the possibility that such a thing could happen. That number 1, that there is such a thing as God, a higher power does exist. And number 2, that God would talk to us, not just to the Pope or to the chief ulama or the head rabbi or somebody who's sacred and holy, but that God would even talk to the likes of me and all of us. And so that's the first step, to embrace the possibility. The second step is to embrace our worthiness, because we admit that God talks to human beings. Most people who believe in God say, yeah, God talked to Moses, God talked to Jesus, God talked to Muhammad, God spoke to Buddha, God spoke to the many masters, throughout male and female, throughout the centuries. So that we don't doubt that God communicates directly to people, but would God talk directly to us? So worthiness, embracing our own worthiness to be communicated with by God, is step number 2. Step number 3 is willingness, to be willing to receive God's information. And that's not a small step, by the way, because religions teach us that it's blasphemy, heresy, and apostasy to actually say out loud, no, you don't understand. God's talking directly to me. Right. We get accused of apostasy.
So special, yeah.
Yeah, and so well, actually, many religions say it's a sin for us to say that, that God is communicating directly through me and to me. So we have to be willing to overcome the messages of our culture that tell us that such a thing is against the law of God. Step number 4 is wakefulness, to stay awake, to be aware that these messages are coming to us from the divine in 100 different ways across 1,000 moments in 1,000,000 lifetimes. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, we are receiving these messages in countless ways, not just words that are coming into us in our ear, but in many different ways: visions, feelings, ideas, thoughts, awarenesses, even fragrances, and in 1,000 different ways that can be messages from the divine. Step number 5 is acceptance. That once we receive the message, that we don't reject it. We don't say, it's just my imagination. It's just a coincidence. It's just serendipity. It's not really a message from God. When all the stars align, and it's clearly something that we have benefited from hearing right here, right now, don't reject it, but move into acceptance of what it is. I remember, just to give you a small example, one night I happened to think of something that was really outrageously, preposterously accurate about God, that God is pure love, and God wants and needs nothing from us, but God's greatest joy is loving us. And I thought, I was looking up, as I was walking down the street at night, it was an evening, dark outside, and I thought, could that really be true? I mean, could that really be true? And at that exact moment, a shooting star crossed the sky in front of me. My God, are you kidding me? Are you telling me that? Now a non-believer would say, "Oh, coincidence, Neale, just serendipity." But no, I know that God said, a shooting star will be how I'll let Neale know the answer is yes.
Mhm.
So acceptance is step number 5, and acceptance is not unimportant. Step number 6, discernment. To be able to know the difference, which is a question you asked a moment ago. How can we tell the difference between messages from God and messages from another source? A movie we saw, a book we read 20 years ago, or something that somebody said to us that may not be accurate. So discernment, and how I tell the difference, how I know that the message is from the divine, it always speaks of freedom, joy, and love. Those are the 3 qualities, the 3 energetics that I use to determine whether the message is from the divine or from some other source. The energetics are freedom. If I feel suddenly unshackled, suddenly free. If I feel joy, suddenly joyful, full of joy. And if I feel love, if I feel that I'm being loved and that I am love, and that all I want to do is love everything I touch. I sometimes run out into the backyard, and you're going to laugh at this, but I sometimes go out into my own backyard and hug the tree and say to the tree, thank you for the beauty that you've placed into my life, for the apples that you caused to fall to the ground. We pick them up by the basketful. And for the joy and the wonder of life expressed in you, through you, as you. To love everything. I love my house. I actually hug my house.
Mhm.
Ooh, sometimes when I leave it, I say thank you, because everything is life in motion.
Mhm.
So You know, that's discernment. When I feel freedom, joy, and love, then I know the message has come from that element of life that I call God. I could, of course, be wrong about all of that.
I think, well, I don't think, I know, because there's a difference between thinking and knowing, and there's a discernment, a distinction to make, at least in my experience. And I think this, if it's true for me, I guess it's true for everyone. I think it is the truth that if I'm thinking about something and imagining something, then it could be debatable. But when I feel something that's true, truth isn't debatable. You just have a feeling. You just have a knowing. It floods through you. It's tangible. And you just know. And you don't need any proof, and there is no doubt. And it doesn't really matter what you try to believe around it, and your head comes in and goes, yes, but what if? And it's like it just blasts it out of the way. When you're in truth, you're in truth. There is no belief needed.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I wish I could spend more time with you, but I do have another appointment. So thank you very much for the time we've shared here today. It's been wonderful to be with you. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. So much love to you, Neale. Thank you for your beautiful words and your energy. Much love.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tara, for all that you do to bring awareness and clarity and the possibility of greater consciousness to the people whose lives you touch.
Mm.
Nice job. Bye for
And so, for all of you gorgeous viewers, I'm going to encourage you to go and buy Neale's gorgeous book, God Talk. And there's lots of validating stories in there, that all the different ways that you can communicate with God or feel like you're listening and getting messages from God, all the different ways. And there's lots of different stories. So it's really, really gorgeous. And he will go over that process again if you didn't catch that. So thank you for viewing. Thank you for being here and sharing. I hope you got as much feeling and truth out of that as I did. And please share your comments. Please communicate with me. Let me know how that feels for you, what you thought about having Neale on my show. I'm so going to have him back again because it was a whole bunch more things we could have talked about. And thank you for being part of my community on my channel. And thank you for your subscription, for your likes, for everything, and for your sharing. And I love you so much. And take care, and I'll see you soon.